Hello everyone and welcome to my channel Knitted Art History, where I'm sitting telling you some art history stories while knitting. And well, hello to another video. And as you can see by the name, finally we are on the theme of architecture. So today we're going to be talking about Etruscan architecture. So I will briefly tell you about their cities, about some of the temples, the type of temples they were building, well, etc. So about books also, I don't know if I will find something, because everything that I was using, those old books starting from from Soviet period of time, because we had a lot of actually very good researchers here, like here and from other also countries that were in Soviet Union. So they had a very fundamental researches done on specific themes, and well, Etruscan theme is one of them, as well as some of the Middle Eastern theme, Middle Eastern architecture also. It's one of them. We have a lot of stuff. A lot of stuff also was done on Spain specifically. I don't know why some of the researcher was so fond of Spain, but yes, we have a lot of interesting books, and unfortunately they are either in Russian because it's Soviet Union, or in Ukrainian in very rare cases. So yeah, and they're not online, so I won't be able to recommend you anything to read. Well, I don't think that I have anything anymore here. So the only thing is that yeah, I lost my mind a bit when I was preparing this, because I'm writing down everything in Ukrainian, and then I translate some bits in English to some words that I don't know or something like that. And well, I mean, it was not a big problem, because obviously those terms architecture are like Latin origins or ancient Greek origins, so so the pronunciation is not pronunciation, the word itself is the same as it was and as it is in different languages, but the pronunciation of these words is just killing me, so I will try maybe sometimes to pronounce everything just in this Ukrainian, with Ukrainian accent. So bear with me. But well, without further ado, I think we can start, because I don't have anything to add anymore. I'm taking my knitting. It's already March, it's already spring, and I just started to knit some hats and all of this stuff, directly in time. But well, whatever. So Etruscan architecture. Etruscans on its own, they are very, it's a very interesting period of time, very interesting period in art history, because there's a lot of stuff that is still being, kind of a secret to us. It is still a theme that needs a lot of research, and still provides us with a lot of new and interesting finds. Well, you understood what I mean. Overall, if we're talking about Etruscan art, we can, Etruscan art can be divided on 3 periods. So first of them is, so the first period, it's the period of time starting from 7th till beginning of 5th century BC. We're talking about BC period here. The second one is 5th, 4th BC, and the third one is middle of 4th till first period, till 1st century BC. So the first period of time is also called archaic period of time. Well, canonically, as we can say, in a lot of periodization, the first period is called archaic, so here is also like that. So this archaic period in itself can be actually divided into several periods, as it covers the development of the artistic culture of the Etruscans from the beginning to the time of its highest flourishing, which coincided with the flourishing of the powerful Etruscan cities. In the archaic era, the Etruscans undoubtedly felt a strong influence from the people of the Eastern Mediterranean, and also especially from Greece. They not just took everything from everyone and said that this is ours now. No, they was we can basically say they was inspired by some of the stuff, and they were just they were taking some things from other cultures, and they were redoing it on their own manner and with their own vision. So this period is characterized by a high level of construction technology, which was manifested in engineering, defense, and also public buildings that were mainly built from stone. So the second period was marked by the gradual decline of the power of Etruscans. So there is like not really any innovation in this period of time in architecture. So they were, mainly just using the same things, same techniques. And the last period, the third period, is characterized by the, I think I can say strong influence of, Hellenistic influence manifested in the development of residential buildings, military construction, and the wider introduction of Greek order forms, which, however, here were used only as a decoration. In Greek architecture, you see this like one of their distinctive features. So everything that was built had its own function, apart of some kind of symbolic stuff after that, but on the first place it had function. It was not just a decoration. So yeah, so there was, like, you see a very big difference here. Etruscans were using like columns, for example, sometimes just a decoration. Greeks, it was very rare that they were using it as a decoration. It was a function. Then, as I said, they were just creating these columns of different shapes and forms, and then putting into that some kind of like semantic meaning. But overall, in the first place, that was a functional piece that was not there just for decoration. So if you were like take it down, the whole building will fall apart basically. So yeah, but here was Etruscans were using a lot of stuff just for pure decoration. If we're talking about also building materials, so the main one were obviously wood and stone, as well as clay, and also such thing as volcanic sand, which was called pozzolans, which was used as a binder. In the north parts, limestone, hard sandstone, and travertine were used, and in the southern part, various types of tufa. And interestingly, Etruscans didn't use marble. So wood was used to cover bridge spans and roofs, and clay and bricks were used to build walls. The best type of clay were used from the production of sculptural terracotta, ceramics, and shaped slabs. The Etruscan built from stone using square or polygonal masonry without solution. I will obviously show you what is this. The lime solution served them mainly for plastering the walls before painting. And the Etruscans knew false walls also, and domes, which are formed by overlapping rows of masonry and were used to cover tombs and cisterns. They used the same method for transition from the corners of the square buildings to the dome. The first theme that we will dive into is urban planning. So basically how cities was made and how they were built and what cities we know. So the Etruscan urban planning schemes was formed gradually and is connected with ancient Etruscan rites. So as far as I remember, what our teacher was telling on on our lectures about architecture and also about Etruscan art, we don't really know stuff, like a lot of stuff about their beliefs and everything. Because there's like not a lot of stuff preserved, or I believe that they had their own writing, and if I remember correctly, it is still not deciphered, but don't quote me on that. But I believe that it's still in process. Maybe in last year something was made, maybe it was deciphered. I don't know, to be honest. If you maybe heard something about this, like, let us know in the comments. But overall, we don't really know a lot about this rites. However, it is known that the Etruscans had such thing as ritual books, in which it was said according to which rites cities were founded, altars and temples were consecrated, and etc. So under favorable signs, the priest oriented the future city by determining the direction of the main streets according to the directions of the world. Then he outlined the boundaries of the future city, encircled the city with a symbolic mode, and outlined the places of the gates in the future walls. Sometimes the correct layout of the terrain was hindered by too uneven terrain, or some chaotic buildings that were already that existed already there on this place. And obviously it led to the necessary deviation from the ritual norms, limiting itself to the arrangement of the city centers with the temple of the triad of deities on the hill that dominated the city. In this enclosed space of the future city, a system of streets was created that formed rectangular blocks. The width of the main and secondary streets and blocks was in a certain ratio. The city had to have at least 3 streets, 3 gates, and also at least 3 temples. So it is again, you know, this correspondence to the Etruscan triad gods. An example of a proper Etruscan city was considered to be the city that stood on the site of modern city Marzabotto, the remains of which was discovered in the 19th century. This city, perhaps back in Etruscan time, it was called Misa, existed in the 6th, 5th century BC and started to decline in 4th century BC after the invasion of Gauls. In the northeastern part, on the hill of Misanella, there was a sacred center, the Acropolis. How we know that? Because archaeologists found the sockles of temples and altars there. So here also, I don't know what word to use. I mean, I found that correctly would be to use the word sockles here, but there's also such word as plinth. I don't really know. So this might be my problem a bit here with terminology in English, because you know I don't have anyone to ask which will be correct. But from what I found and from what I read, what sockles is and plinth is, like sockle made more sense to use here. So they found this Acropolis, and at the foot on the Misano Plateau, the city stretched over an area for more than 100 hectares. A regular grid of streets divided the residential part of the city into rectangular blocks. 2 main streets crossed the city from east to west and from north to south, and they had sidewalks and cobblestones, and all of these were like 15 meters wide. The secondary street was 5 meters wide. In the southern part of the city, streets with a width of 12 meters have been preserved. The main street had channels for the drainage of rainwater covered with stone slabs on the intersections. The side parts of sidewalks were a bit raised, and separately laid stones made it possible to cross the street during a very heavy rains. Water was supplied to the city through the underground channels from a water collection facility located outside of the city. The street grid formed residential blocks with a length of 165 meters and a width of it was starting from 35-40 till 68 meters. There were production workshops with auxiliary premises and benches, and behind them there were grouped small living rooms, which were called cubicles, that opened into the courtyard. The city probably was bigger than we think. Because researchers and archaeologists believe that somewhere nearby there was an aristocratic district with houses and villas of the nobility, which owned the tomb opened near Marzabotto with a complicated layout, rich utensils, and also decorations. This assumption explains the huge expenses of the city's founders on roads, water supply, and sewerage. Another city that we know, it's the city Spina, and it's considered to be by researchers the only Etruscan city with a regular layout with mutually perpendicular access, the ruins of which were discovered by archaeologists in 1856 in the old mouth of the Po River. With the help of aerial photography, it was possible to reveal the outlines of streets and blocks of the city, under the water, under the sand also. And this city rivaled the largest ancient ports of the Mediterranean basin in terms of its trade turnover. Goods from Asia Minor, which is Anatolia, modern Turkey and nearby countries, and goods from this part, goods from Greece also went here. Etruscan ceramics, iron, and jewelry were exported from here. Numerous cups, amphoras, and antique vases which were found in the sand layers of Adriatic Sea confirmed the existence of extensive international connections of Spina. Residents moved along the canals on boats. The large canal that was 30 meters wide was the corrected course of the Po River and crossed the entire city in a straight line from north to south, and was connected with small canals that crossed it at irregular intervals, forming again these rectangular blocks. Discoveries in Spina make it possible to assume that the scheme of the cities corresponded to the town planning customs of the Etruscan and approached the Great Street Plan. So it is like it is a term in English, but like in post-Sovietic countries here and in Sovietic book, we are using the term hippodrome system of the city. So again, I looked it up. I haven't saw the usage of this term, and well, it was named after the architect, like ancient Greek architect Hippodamus of Milet. And obviously, you see, it wasn't the thing that that Hippodamus created, because we know this type of layout starting from a very like old period of time, and not just in like European part. Like for example, a very good example is Mohenjo-daro in India, which like dates back in time also. So yeah, so it's not something that was created by this Hippodamus, but just, you know, a fun fact, just because interestingly, you know, like with periodization, for example, and names also, we like here in like post-Sovietic countries, we call it a bit different, some of the things, and we have a little bit different periodization for certain stuff also, which is again pretty interesting. But yeah, so again, just little fun fact. So in English currently, this thing called Great Street Plan, but in other parts of the world, we are calling it the Hippodrome system of the city. So the findings of archaeologists in Tarquinia and Volsinia confirmed that these were large cities, also with straight streets, with palaces and temples. The remains of the fortress walls and acropolises were found here also. And Etruscan cities died, but Etruscan tombs that were created, you know, in this form of residential buildings survived, and they provide actually the rich material about Etruscan housing, its plan and interior decoration of the house. Next thing that I will tell you is about temples. As I said, not a lot of stuff is preserved, so we don't really know, you know, for 100% about this, but well, the most ancient Etruscan temples were built from raw bricks. Again, here I found also such term as adobe, but I am like, here I'm not sure at all what to use to be honest, but you know, so it's like either you call it in English raw or adobe bricks. And also wood was used for columns of porticos and ceilings, and therefore it is natural that they did not reach our time, and we can just and we can judge them only by the preserved foundations and by pedestals made from, you know, from stone without any solution. Also by numerous terracotta facings and decorations, by wall-to models, and also written evidences. Mostly it was written in the works of Vitruvius, another a few theorists, like architecture and theorists also, and his like book of architecture is like one of the things, you know, everyone learning this. If you're an architecture, if you're an art historian, like we're learning this, we're reading these 10 books, so yeah. Already at the beginning of the first period, which is, I'm reminding you, it's like 7th century BC. Along with the open sanctuaries, the Etruscans also had the simplest temples, reminiscent of Greek prostyles with 2-column porticos in front of a single shallow room, which is called cella. There's like, in Greek architecture, there's different type of this, of temples, of these sacred buildings, which is very interesting. So again, we'll show you obviously, so you can pause and look it up. But Etruscan, they were, you know, more on this simple side, as we can say. So at the end of 7th century, the beginning of 6th century BC, the main type of single-celled and 3-celled churches with more developed multi-column porticos was developed. Sorry for this repetition. The main type of Etruscan columns, which developed together with temples, are also close in form to prototypes of Greek architectural orders. However, the term architectural order can hardly be applied to these columns, since the part located above them did not have clear tectonic divisions. The main type of these columns, which can be considered as a prototype of Tuscan order of Vitruvius, is characterized by a smooth, sharply narrowed upward trunk on a rough round base. Here it is, as far as I understand correctly to use word plinth, which ends with a flattened echinus and a tall abaco, whose total height often exceeded the upper diameter of the column trunk. There were another more complex type of the Etruscan column, but as far as I remember, they were mostly using this first pretty simple one, which resembles the Tuscan order. Again, obviously we'll show you everything, all the different orders, so you will see the difference what I'm talking about. Well, surprisingly, it will be very well, for me, very short video, and we will end up with burial buildings, because this is these buildings are preserved the most. So Etruscan tombs can be divided in two main types. So the first one, older one, is a tumulus, is a conical earthen hill surrounded at the base by a stone wall that protects it from falling. The mound hid inside one or more burial chambers made of stone, usually covered by a false dome or vault. By the end of the 6th century, this type of tomb was largely supplanted by rock-cut tomb. They were covered with false domes or vaults, also just like the burial chamber of Tumulus. After the 6th century BC, these overlaps gradually disappeared. Etruscan rock tombs were located outside the fortress walls and lined up in a whole street, forming cities of the dead, which is called necropolises. The grandest necropolis of southern Etruria of the 7th century BC, discovered near Tsare, its modern Cerveteri. Most of the tumuluses are concentrated in the Banditacci and Abitonian necropolises. Italians, don't throw rocks at me, please, for my pronunciation of these words. I'm sorry. So the necropolis lies on a plateau on which tumuluses of various sizes and later tombs are located on both sides of the main and several cross streets. These low hills, as we can say, were distinguished by simplicity and, despite their relatively modern size, also monumentality. The corridor opened in the front part. It's called dromos. So this dromos steeply descended into the depths of the tufa rock. All the elements of the chambers were carved in tufa. Household items which were originally buried with the deceased were sometimes carved into the rock, imitating the dwellings of the living. In the southeastern side of the necropolis, an even older cemetery, which called Sorbo, was discovered. It was here in 1836 that Regolini Galassi tomb, which dates back to the beginning of 7th century BC, was discovered. Initially, it consisted of an oblong chamber and a dromos with a total length of 20 meters and two oval chambers on the side of the corridor. Then the dromos was covered and turned into an anterior chamber similar to the main one. Another interesting tomb is tomb of the painted lions, also located in Cerveteri, belongs to the same type of tombs. The ceiling of the main chamber in it is supported by a beam on two pillars, which divides the room into two parts. These pillars are formed by parts of a smooth wall that remained after punching three large holes and are not architecturally dissected. The main part of the chamber has a gable roof relieved by small races and is supposed to depict a wooden structure. The tufa ridge beam of the ceiling is passed through the transverse wall and ends with a large disc on the ceiling in the front of the chamber. There are stripes running from the three walls to the disc on the ceiling. In the 4th century BC, the spatial composition of burial chamber of the tumulus becomes more complicated. A type of tomb with a tripartite distribution of the plan appears. So, for example, in one of them, which is called the tomb of the Greek vases, also in Cerveteri, it is the end of 6th century BC. A large chamber imitates the living room of an Etruscan home. A walled dromos leads into a large chamber with 2 niches on both sides and into 3 smaller chambers. A gable roof with a ridge beam is located along the axis of the entrance. The central and side chambers are furnished with beds, and the 3 rear ones are furnished with benches. Near the entrance to the large room, 2 men's beds. On the sides, 2 women's sarcophagi with triangular ends. In the so-called tomb of the chairs and shield with the tripartite distribution of the plan, a flat ceiling with transverse beams is depicted above the main chamber. All 3 doors are arranged in the same way. They taped slightly upwards and are framed by moldings with straight protrusions in the upper corner. In the Viterbo area from the 6th century BC, the so-called cubic rock tombs were built. This type of tomb was most often cut into the rock by only 3/4 or half of the volume. During the Hellenistic period, the architecture of Etruscan tombs underwent significant changes. Instead of individual tumulus tombs of rich families, huge chambers with any architectural characteristics began to prevail, with walls sprinkled with hundreds of small niches for urns with ashes. Sometimes they are filled with continuous rows of funeral beds. So, for example, one of these tombs is like a tomb of reliefs of the 3rd century BC, with the overall dimensions of the chamber being 7 on 8 meters, and it has 13 large niches in the walls and 32 places for burying the body on a common bench. The 2 columns that extended downwards and the pilasters along the walls have chapiters with scrolls growing from the foundation of the chapiter. So chapiter is this, upper part of the column. The pilasters of the side walls are decorated only with images of shields under the chapiters, and in the fields under the niches that are drawn with only colored bands. But the pilasters on the side of the central niche opposite the entrance and all the surfaces of the supporting pillars are covered with reliefs and brightly colored household items and weapons. And the last tomb that I will mention today is the tomb of Volumnus in Perugia, which were opened in 1840 and dates back to the end of the 2nd century BC. There is an inscription on the right side of the door indicating that Volumnius was the founder of this tomb. This tomb is also divided on three parts, but here, so as I said, it divided on 3 pieces, but here the main chamber is extended into the depths. Side chambers located in the depths of the tomb no longer open into the main chamber, as in the tombs of the 6th century BC. The tomb has rooms corresponding to the atrium and tablinum and 8 side chambers. 4.5 meter high atrium with a gable ceiling imitates a room with a wooden roof. In the side walls of the atrium there were entrances to the cells, square in plan, with benches along the walls on which urns were placed. The main room, the tablinum, seems very large. In the center is the urn of the founder of the Volumnius tomb, in the form of a sarcophagus. To the right, the sarcophagi of sons and relatives. To the left, the daughters' urns. In the center of the ceiling is a square caisson, a relief with Medusa on it. So today's video will be this brief one. After this few hour-and-a-half long videos, yes, today I will not be, putting a lot on you. Yeah, so maybe, in the future, maybe we will develop this theme, but yeah, basically it's everything that I have for today. I myself, I don't really like short videos, because I like to put something, for at least 1 hour, because I like everything to be in depth. I like every detail, I like everything like this, so yeah, so it's strange to make such short videos, but well, I took the most important information, which will create, at least the first impression of Etruscan architecture for you. And yeah, so I will stop rambling. The next videos maybe will be, we might get back to jewelry. I think we will get back to decorative arts in next videos, but we'll see. So yeah, so I wish you all the best. Good day, good morning, good evening, good night, whenever you are. And yeah, hope to see you in the next video, and hope that this brief story from me today was still informative and you still found out something interesting for yourself. Stay safe, stay healthy, and wish you all the best, and hope to see you next time. Bye bye.